You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
What's up, everyone? We got another episode for you. My name is Yerasimos. Got my co-host Joel Rafidi here, and really excited to bring this awesome episode to you. Our focus really is about having really dynamic, amazing conversations. We called it Here for the Truth for a reason. We're here for it. We want to really bring you the brightest, most innovative thinkers in the truth, health, freedom movement, and keep moving forward in life. And just want to remind you as well, we have our final spots remaining for our 8-week group coaching program, Rise Above the Herd. So it's probably going to be the last one of the year. So head to riseabovetheherd.co to check out what it's about and to fill out application. And I guess without further ado, let's bring on Bear. This conversation really went in so many different directions. We talked about Steiner. We talked about different planes of consciousness. We talked about a whole bunch of other stuff. So buckle up and get ready for the ride.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 86 of Here for the Truth podcast. As always, we have an amazing guest for you. Today's no different. We have Dr. Barre Lando in the house. He's the founder and formulator for Alfa Vedic. Dr. Barre Lando traveled an eclectic path through athletics and academics to becoming a physician, bioterrain specialist, and permaculture farmer. Dr. Lando is noted amongst his peers for his innovative clinical strategies and developed an international following for people suffering from chronic degenerative conditions, seeking his services as a bioterrain medicine and functional movement specialist. In more recent years, he earned his Master Gardener and Permaculture Design certification and presently oversees his off-grid medicinal herb farm while teaching biodynamic farming methods and ionization soil analysis. Now retired from clinical medical practice, he remains active in the internal martial arts, health consulting, creating formulations for his herbal company, and developing innovative medical protocols based on the principles of waveform physics. Dr. Barre Lando, thank you for being here for the truth.
Honor to be with you, gentlemen. Yerasimos, I've been with you before. You've been on our podcast,
Yeah.
so great to see your shining face again.
Awesome,
and Joel,
man.
pleasure to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Love having you here, and obviously, listening to that bio, I know we left a bunch out, but you've lived such a full life, man. You've done so many amazing things. You've really been an individual. You've really kind of gone off your own path and not really like conformed from just a little I know of you and from what I've read about you. And so I just love to hear some of your journey in life. You're at this place now where you've created Alfa Vedic, however many years ago, and it's just been growing to this beautiful thing. But like, what led you to it? What were some of those major rites of passage in your life that kind of shifted along the way? Tell us about your hero's journey.
Yeah, good question. I can say no big master game plan. One thing just led to another, and here we are. Just to let you guys know, I forgot pre-show that I'm off grid and I'm on a satellite. And if it spits us out, and if we have any problems, just holler right away, and then I'll switch to another modem. But I can always get back on in 2 seconds. So anyway, to answer your question,
my internet's not great either, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, you're in the far off land of Topanga, right?
Yeah, we're deep in Topanga, so it's not the greatest.
Topanga
But we'll see. I mean, you're in the real wilderness, so anyways.
Yeah, so I always say it began with sports. I grew up in the country, a rural area, but journeyed into small town school, and sports were kind of everything to me. I always had a ball in my hands, and I excelled in sports for whatever reason. So I enjoyed them a lot, all the way through grammar school and high school and college. And when I got into higher level training and athleticism, I really wanted to understand more about the body and more just how to get the competitive edge. So I was a little bit more scientific about my training, especially when I got to the college level. Even in high school, I was dabbling around and, reading stuff that other athletes were doing and reading things on nutrition, got a hold of early books by nature paths, the old pioneers like Paul C. Bragg, and seeing what
Mm.
they were doing, and how they ate. And so I just had a fascination with it. And I guess if you went back to day one, when I was born, I was third attempt by my parents for a girl. It didn't happen. So they named me after the family doctor, great old guy. He was like a true uh, doctor, medical doctor, but uh, angels come in all different diplomas and types. So he was amazing. His name was Dr. Bear Paul, which is my name. They named him after me. And so I think I just had this kind of fascination with medicine. He used to bring me out in his office when I was a little kid and have me announce my name in the waiting room, to tell everybody. And yeah, so anyway, back to sports. When I got to university level, I had to access the university library, and I started taking pre-med stuff, and not really for any desire to excel academically, but just to figure out how this thing works called the human body. And that brings us into the college years in the 60s, which was great time. So, um, I started reading books like Carlos Castaneda, and, talking about people shape shifting into coyotes. And so here I was, playing football at a major university and training, and, um, also kind of dabbling into the metaphysical at the same time. So, I had long hair sticking out my back of my helmet, which back then it was kind of a revolutionary sort of thing. Um, actually, took a couple of mind altering things in some major games a few times, and just to see what that would be like, when there's, big stadiums and things. So that was a lot of
How
fun.
was your performance? What position did you play?
I was a defensive end
Okay.
kind of position. Yeah.
Did you get like extra sacks the those games when you were in an altered state?
I had a lot of fun. And to be honest, Monday when we look at game films, I was a little nervous to find out if I actually played as good as I thought I did.
Nice.
But it was a real interesting time. So sports led me into just discovering what the body was all about. And I think the time period was all about exploring, your psyche and your place in the universe, and just dabbling into different areas of consciousness. There's a great music revolution at the same time. And then I decided to go into medicine. I had the pre-med degree, and that's it. When I was in getting ready to go into my next level medical training, I had two brothers that were firemen, and they said, "Hey, yeah, this one department up in Marin County in Northern California is hiring people that can have the college prerequisites to get accepted into this program that Stanford University is putting on, which is paramedics that would be working through fire departments." At that time, there was television shows because paramedics were the new thing. In fact, there's a picture right up there of me in an episode. You can just see my feet in the picture. But that was Rescue 51. That was a big
Mm.
show back then. And Stanford wanted to one up this new level paramedics that were practicing down in LA County by having their own program. So that's the program I was in. And so I did that for 5 years, and then it would have been easy to just go in and complete an MD. I didn't, because I decided, yeah, I think I kind of got what I needed out of, good MASH training, and could do my, medical skills in my sleep, and, because we did it under adverse circumstances. And so I decided to go to 4-year naturopathic college, which
Mm.
I did, mastered, my area of emphasis was Chinese medicine, classical homeopathy, and I was already doing postdoctoral studies, certifications in applied kinesiology, clinical kinesiology, osteopathy, things like that. And then when I was through with naturopathy, I needed still to get a licensed. So I thought I don't need any stinking license these days. But back then, they weren't licensing naturopaths in all the states. So I went to chiropractic college and got a chiropractic degree and hit everything under a chiropractic license during my years of practice. And a lot of other postdoctoral trainings and things, but I'll come up for air here and you guide me the rest of the.
No,
I want to
man.
ask you back then, like were those modalities considered alternative for the time, like naturopathy and osteopathy? Like, were you considered to be an alternate, walking an alternate path?
Oh, absolutely. And they were better because we had to pass the national boards, which got you into your standard medical curriculum. Because, a lot of people don't realize that if you go to naturopathy, chiropractic, or MD, your first 4 years, the core studies are the same books, same classes, everything. So your national boards to go on to the next level, you're responsible for all that material. However, back then, naturopathy and chiropractic as well was less standardized. They
Hmm.
prepared you for those boards, but they never lost that essence of what they're about in the first place. Now you've got naturopaths and chiropractors that have basically been absorbed into the Borg and they're, practicing green allopathy, a lot of them. So we were still a little bit more renegade. You still got more of the true stuff. I felt it was a very fortunate time for me because I had mentors that were icons in osteopathy, uh, meridian therapy, things that just aren't available today. And then also I quickly got absorbed into the whole German school of bioterrain medicine. Got my first microscope and started doing live cell analysis, which was based on the original German Bioterrain medicine, not a lot of the dark field kind of stuff that is going on today, which is I have reservations about. But within that's European school now, I got to rub shoulders with some of the greats in microscopy, understanding, pleomorphism from the source as far as how microbes really work in our bodies, and also getting into the old school of anthropology, which is a blend of understanding the energetic origins of things via Rudolf Steiner, but also very grounded so that the Western mind can understand that, hey, this is real science. And then along those same years, I was, really jumping into sound and light therapy, um, and also into what we call these days, people are remembering it as alchemy,
Mhm.
but alchemy, what I consider a true science
Yeah.
and, true chemistry before it was bastardized and brought us into the new reductionist level of scientism. So all of that was going on in those days. And I feel like I really would have missed out if I wasn't born during that era.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so great luck of the draw.
Yeah. I'm curious. Can you provide us with a basic, I guess, understanding of what Steiner's contribution to this whole field is?
So Rudolf Steiner was what you loosely call an adept. He just came in where the veils were very thin for him, and he was recognized by the members of the Theosophical Society, which included some, well-known names. And of course, a lot of them have become infamous over the years, especially when certain religious groups kind of categorize those members as occult, and therefore all occult is evil and so forth. Which, okay, but Rudolf Steiner was, accepted into that fold. And at that level, as they did back in the day, they would recognize people by the light that they were emanating. For instance, if you were of a certain inner development, then you very well could have been invited into a school of sorts, in which you would get further tutelage to develop yourself and become a member of people that are doing very high level service. And those people also, interestingly, had to learn the ways of the world if they didn't already know, which means how does the legal system work, the political system, the financial system, which is, of course, the same reason why many of us this time around are dabbling in those same kinds of studies, because just like ourselves connecting the dots back then, they understood that if you didn't know how that outer world, the illusion worked, then you could very easily become vulnerable to it. So their studies not only included their inner development, but then how to be in the world and not of it, so to speak. So Rudolf Steiner had a belief that this occult knowledge should be brought out. It was a time where mankind should be aware of certain principles. The old Theosophists believed that uh, mankind wasn't ready, and it was better to have things remain occulted because certain people would misuse the information, of course, which they already were and still are. But anyway, that was a little bit of a struggle. And Madame Blavatsky, who was part of the Theosophical group, she actually walked and talked with people like Saint Germain, and because behind the veil, the people like ourselves that had completed their journey of cycles of embodiments, they work through these people that are of a certain stature and, can do the work on the ground, because on the other side, they can't interfere, but they can work through people that are aware. So Rudolf Steiner wanted to make more people aware. That's what the anthroposophical movement was about. And if you look at the old school that emanated from Asia, that was greatly influenced by an embodiment, an incarnation that we'll loosely call Lucifer, which has become synonymous with the devil, which isn't really correct. That entity was responsible for influencing the more of a tendency or the inclination for spiritual schools in the eastern part of the world to crave out of body experiences through meditation and chanting and so forth. It was about, making that connection with universal, but doing it through out of body experiences. Now, there's another incarnation that some people argue maybe has already happened and other people are trying to bring in, which is what Rudolf Steiner talked about, which was Ahriman. And Ahriman is the exact opposite. He's like the materialism for the, at the expense of spirituality. And that's what we see happening on our planet through science and politics and finance. It's just this soulless, robotic, materialism. So, just like in Chinese medicine, you have the Shen and the Ko cycle, the mom and dad will say the yin and the yang. You need both, but you need a balance between the two. And that's what Rudolf Steiner was. That's what anthroposophical philosophy was. It was the Christ consciousness, which is the Tao, the middle way that is right smack dab in the middle of Lucifer and Ahriman. And so that's what um, Rudolf Steiner brought to the table. That was the context anyway. But then beyond that, his work was voluminous as far as, his work in science, just understanding the uh, energetic origins, just like the old alchemist knew, but he had a different kind of language that was maybe a little bit more palatable for the more contemporaneous scientist in Europe at that time. And I became a student of Steiner through my work in sound therapy, which brought me in touch with an individual who is a musicologist and well-known composer. His name was Joseph Gunzinger. He was in his 80s. I was maybe early 30s back then. And I met him actually in Hawaii, and he took me under his wing. And that was my introduction to Rudolf Steiner. And he had a sound studio. That's what, you know, how we got together, because I mean, here's the guy, a classical conductor and well known. And he was also the number one Rudolf Steiner educator in the world at that time. So,
Wow.
you know, that was my intro. And it was a great one because it was from an individual that was from that world. And also in his lifetime was alive when Steiner was still running around, because, he was older at that time, but came up that those were his roots. So I got a whole different essence that I think would be hard to get if you're just reading books on Steiner. I
Yeah.
don't know if I answered your question.
Oh
That
man, I got far more than I bargained for. Thank you.
I think definitely. I think our audience did for sure. I was just searching online real quickly. I can't really find it. It's been going around for a long time, but this quote from Steiner, I assume it's original. I don't know if it's been altered at all, where he talks about how like, and this is probably over 100 years ago. He's like, in the future there will be a vaccine that takes away the spirit of the individual, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Can you talk? Can you talk about that too? And I'd love to hear your view on vaccines in general from like
Ooh.
from your standpoint, from a bioterrain standpoint, from your knowledge of microbes and what. And I actually really want you to get
Mhm.
into talking about what is bioterrain medicine, what are microbes from your opinion as well. So anything you can take from what I just said, just roll with it.
Well, bioterrain medicine, we'll start with that first. It's just understanding that the ecosystem, when it's healthy and balanced, whether it's external, out in the forest somewhere, or our own bodies inside, which run on the same exact principles, the same universal patterns, when that's healthy, then microbes in the body, are companions. They are there doing not just useful, but life essential things for us. And so biotrain medicine is paying attention to maintaining the ecosystem in order to produce health, and not focused on treating disease or the concept of pathogens, because pathogens is really a misnomer. Microbes only, they don't even create issues, but they pleomorphically evolve in order to adapt to the conditions of the ecosystem. So when the ecosystem goes south, then these guys adapt, and you can actually watch them under a microscope. They change size and form, and right before your eyes in moments. That's how quick things work on that level. And then they might be secreting different enzymes to digest tissues that don't belong there, or to eliminate certain toxins, or to raise body temperature, any number of things that, of course, in medicine we mistakenly call symptoms associated with the disease. And if you have so many symptoms that meet the criteria of a syndrome that has a name on it, like cancer, then, oh, you've got that because you have these symptoms. And it's so farcical and juvenile, the way we think, the things that, the way they work. Early on in medical training, even though I didn't have the information I have now, I just started calling BS on a lot of stuff because it just didn't make sense.
Hmm.
It wasn't logical. So that's bioterrain medicine. Now, steer me back in where how did we get to bioterrain medicine?
I think I started off when we were talking about Steiner, and I was like, I remember there's this quote that's been
Uh,
going around with Steiner for so long about him predicting that there would be a vaccine that would kind
oh,
of
thank you. Thank you.
split the spirit. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew there's a connection somewhere to what I was talking about. Okay. So, uh, of course, he knew he had, the gift of clairvoyance. And, if that seems mystical to people, it's really not, because when you're tuned in on that level, you're not caught in sequential information compression, which creates what we think of as time. You're more in a present state, which allows you to very accurately see what we think of as down the road, but which is actually happening now, and also to see what we think of as the past. So he was one of these individuals that was, had that prescience to just be here and to see in all directions. So he understood the future of vaccines as far as their impact on humanity. Okay, so my own take on vaccines, which is based on several things. My own experience of treating many vaccine damaged kids, um, seeing the effects of people that were fine one day and not so much the next day after they received vaccines, then doing a lot of research in the process over many years to see what certain elements were ingredients in vaccines that would have very predictable and purposeful effects on the body, and then to see statistically how that population that was subjected to those ingredients at the exact time what we would expect the incubation period to end for symptoms to appear, there they are. And now more recently understanding the realm of waveform physics, where all matter as we think of it is nothing more than waveforms that emanate from consciousness. Now they're real. They're more real than what we think of as matter. So we're not saying, oh, this is simulation. It doesn't matter and it's all fake. No, it's actually the simulation is more real and has more depth in ways that we don't appreciate. But it, again, more real than what we think of as the physical universe. So you take that consciousness, which we are all individualizations of, and we produce a thought, which is an electrical vector, which then, by the nature of electricity, has to polarize to create a resonance. And then, just like the alchemists of old knew, that resonance travels down different layers of what we'll call the ether and different planes and subplanes that comprise our entire reality and our bodies into the final precipitation of matter. Now, when we're on the ground, there's a lot we could talk about as far as how we interact with these higher levels of the ether and consciousness. It's a constant two-way communication. And even when we're not aware of it, if that wasn't a fact, then our avatar would cease to be projected on the instant. And, it would look on the ground to those around us that we just had a physical death. So the waveforms that now create all of that, they are within our realm of control as individualizations. It's what we're here to do, is to master that. But in order to receive those finer impulses from, those other higher levels of consciousness, we need a capacitor on the ground, which is our body, and different inorganic elements within our body that comprise our body create uh, the multiple numbers of capacitors that are um, to receive the specific level of resonances that collectively create the human form and give us the form and function that we recognize and allow us to operate as a vehicle to house spirit in the first place. And the DNA now is an after effect of that resonance. It's not a deterministic factor as we learn in medicine. Oh, your DNA is what you are. And basically you're dealt that, deck of cards and get over it. No, not at all. The DNA is a product of our own consciousness. But if we're on the ground having this experience, it does provide an antenna effect that is very, very important to have that two-way communication. And if that DNA is altered, which vaccines have always been designed to do, but now they're doing it on steroids and also have the extra potentiation with microwave frequencies that can ping off of this altered DNA in order to create even more dramatic effects. So when you alter your DNA, as Rudolf Steiner understood, as I've learned myself, then you shut off the capacity to ping off of those higher realms, those impulses, those messages that are coming from our higher electronic body that awaken us and allow us to fulfill the reason why we're embodied in the first place. So, altering your DNA by way of vaccines, which is the priority goal of the vaccine industry, is a bad, bad idea. And it's also a reason why many people that got the recent vaccines um, very often make comments like, I can't feel God anymore. I just feel shut off. I feel dead inside. Very understandable reason for that when you understand how it works and what those are designed to do. Very sinister.
Quite a shocking existential crisis to find yourself in, for sure. So, like the majority of us, on some level, before I guess growing into greater awareness about the nature of vaccines, have probably had vaccines as kids growing up, etc. Is there a repair phase that can take place?
Sure. There always is. There's always a remedy.
Yeah.
And I had vaccines when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's maybe about three or four. And as I was taught in my school, my early medical training is you never give these to kids before the age of 2. And there's, again, maybe grew to a handful at that point. Now there's what, 60, 70 that you get in your first 2 years of life. So remember, we commented that DNA is an after effect of
Mm.
waveforms, and waveforms come from your consciousness. So you can always awaken to a level where you're coming from that level of consciousness, changing the waveforms very purposefully and literally changing your DNA. And in my medical experience, I saw people changing their DNA all the time. We had ways to verify that. So no, it's never a done deal. It's never a thing where you just give up and I'm toast. There's always a solution. But here's the real issue: people that get these vaccines, like these ones going out and getting the COVID stuff these days, probably aren't in the state of awareness that's going to allow that to happen in the first place. So probably not going to have much of a happy ending for many people. And I strongly believe that over the next 5 years, we'll see minimum about 2 billion people succumb to that. Already there's way, way more people than what's reported. In the circles I travel, I keep my ear to the ground and have a lot of conduits of information that don't hit the mainstream, even alternative. And, it's much, much more extensive and worse than what anybody realizes already. So, yeah, you can change your DNA and change the effects. There's also things you can do on the ground physically to get rid of some of those elements, that would get more into what we would think of as, alternative medicine and technologies and things. So, uh, still, there's a price to pay either way.
I find it so interesting when I first started going down the vaccine rabbit hole and decided to go, hey, let me research and look into what's actually in these things, And if I were to look at each ingredient, ask myself, how does each one of these ingredients make a person healthier? It's like that's what I was so curious about. Like you ask someone, like, please tell me how each one of these things makes. How does insect DNA, how does animal DNA make a person healthier? And so when you talk about DNA, like there's, and I'm a novice, so like correct me if I'm wrong, but like seeing how they're injecting foreign DNA into little babies, like that can have a positive effect, in my opinion.
No, I mean, again, it doesn't pass the logical muster. It's like you're a mechanic and you're working on a Range Rover and you're throwing in Pinto parts, you know? It's like, why would you do that? It just doesn't work. Um, so there's three things in every vaccine from day one. And also there's never been, just in case anybody's wondering, and this is my opinion based on a lot of experience and you know
Hmm.
from the horse's mouth kind of thing too. There's never been one vaccine that's prevented a disease ever. They don't do that. They're not designed to do that. And then another whole discussion is, well, there's no such thing as disease either.
Yes.
So, but that's another,
Yeah. What are they trying to
wormhole.
prevent? Exactly.
Yeah. So you have toxins that shut down the body's normal resiliency. I try to refrain from using the term immunity because it also conjures up our body as biological battlefields, and
Mm-hmm.
we're always going to war, and then the antibodies are shooting bullets at the bad guys and everything. But, we do have regenerative systems that keep us resilient and strong. And so there are poisons that you can take to undermine that. And those are present in vaccines, things like mercury,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah.
The other thing is you have retroviruses. Now, that takes a little explaining because viruses, as we think of them, do not happen in nature. Okay. And again, another huge topic. However, they do concoct a lot of things in the lab. We can talk more about what viruses really are, and
Sure.
how labs mistake certain things for viruses because they have been conjectured to be viruses, or that they kind of fit the description that medicine has made up for these mythical creatures. But retroviruses are laboratory concoctions, and there are certain elements that exist in nature where microorganisms do certain things. Uh, Long story short, you put these in there, and to this day, they use those in order to um, re-engineer DNA strands, because the retroviruses, again, we'll use that term loosely, actually have the ability to splice in genetic material and change DNA sequences. Those are present in all vaccines from day one. The other thing they do is they put in foreign material that is going to be used to change your DNA and also do some other very sinister things to your well being.
Hmm.
So, if we think about it, with those three ingredients, you shut down the body's ability to get rid of this crap in the first place through the mercury and many other toxins they gave you. You also have elements that allow us to re-engineer, resequence things, and then you have the ingredient that they want to get into those sequences and then elsewhere in your body in order to change the effects and make you less human and make you less well.
Yeah.
So we touched on the occult before, but do you think there's like a dark occult aspect
Oh,
to these concoctions?
that's where the good stuff is really happening.
Mm.
um, these folks, you have to understand, we talk about all these lost disciplines, alchemy and so forth, where they had a very high level of awareness and understanding, not just intellectually, but uh, possess the capability to use these concepts in order to create real things, to actually transmutate matter from one form to another. So, things that present day scientists would call BS on because they're operating at such an infantile level. Now, you don't think that these occulted groups that suppress this information didn't keep it for themselves and have used it ever since? Of course they did. Also, along with that is the ability to interject on different subplanes of consciousness and manipulate entire species, mankind, on the mental plane. So we've been hijacked on that level. And that is why, it appears that we're, living in the zombie apocalypse right now. Um, However, back to the vaccines, when they are making batches of these things and have these ingredients to change the very nature of ourselves and shut us down, basically, there are very powerful rituals that they do in certain circles with different batches of medicines, we'll call them, in order to also work on those subplanes so that their interference can work from a higher level and create that lack of coherence all the way down on the ground and make their physical medicine even more effective to meet their own goals. But of course, to not leave this in a too dark place, when we develop the ability to go on those levels, then we will create coherence that will filter down, which is infinitely more powerful than what they've done or what they're trying to do. So again, there's always solution.
And
Mhm.
what is required for us to reach those levels?
Takes a lot of elbow grease. It takes being willing to face your fears, and it takes an education that can only come from embodiments of experience that allow you to be ready and accessible in any given lifetime. Not that anybody is less qualified or inferior than another individual and embodiment, but all individuals are not equal because we have had different experiences. We're ready for different things. And the folks that are just in the zombie culture, it's not that they're wrong or doing anything bad, but they are making decisions that will have effects that will give them an experience and probably the exact experience that they need, even though it might seem pretty harsh to some of us observing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you, real quickly, I just want to ask, because this word gets thrown around a lot, embodiment. Can you just, from your point of view, what is embodiment?
So, if we can accept that in the realm of pure consciousness and that universal consciousness that individualizes us, many schools, and actually this can be measured in ways, have identified a part of our anatomy that isn't readily seen by the average person. You can call it the causal body, the higher electronic body, your I am presence. But that is the original projection from universal consciousness. I'm just trying to use non
Mhm.
denominational terms there so I don't offend anybody, but it doesn't matter what you call it.
I think we've offended enough people already.
So, what's that?
I think we've offended enough people already. It's all good.
Good. So, we're doing a good job here. Uh, now that electronic body, of course, has does not interfere with the free will of the avatar on the ground. And for whatever reason, when mankind decided to start experimenting and doing stupid things and forgetting who we were in the first place, now the only people that can figure it out is ourselves. So and that comes from experience. And so when that experience leads to a place where there's no more possible learning, then there's really no reason to be in a body anymore in that particular lifetime. So that electronic body will just withdraw the projection. And of course, in the realm of pure consciousness, that electronic body, that I am presence, never goes anywhere. It's an eternal um, form of consciousness, individualized. So rather than just one strike and you're out, uh, you know, then there will be another projection that will also not just project another body into the realm, into the simulation, whatever the heck you want to call it, and it will also carry with it in the next embodiments, if you want to think about it sequentially in a time concept, that will have a lot of the energies and things that were created in prior times that are unfinished business, and those energetic patterns will precipitate similar experiences that will give that individual yet again another opportunity to figure things out. So, if you think about it, if there is a universal consciousness, and if it is all loving and benevolent and all knowing, the one strike and you're out sort of system would be pretty harsh. Uh, that's like you got to pass the final exam on the first day of class. So
Yeah.
that'd be pretty tough, and it really wouldn't be the part of wisdom or compassion. And then if you get into the science of it, it makes a lot of sense as well. So I believe in reincarnation. There seems to be more evidence for it than not. And also, the Nazarene talked about it in different lost scriptures and things. Talked very at length about reincarnation.
Yeah. What is your take on reincarnation?
Well, other than just what we've already discussed,
Hmm.
reincarnation is again the next opportunity to re-embody
Yeah.
and have a chance to get off the reincarnation wheel. I mean, that's the goal. We were never, so we're told, meant to be victimized or held captive by our own creation, or any particular experience or any particular point of coordinate of consciousness in universal. We are supposed to be able to come and go as we wish, and enjoy our experience, our own creations, and not be feel like we're a victim of it. That gets back to healthcare. It's really kind of ludicrous. I mean, we all have our issues. I've had my own and everything,
Mhm.
but to think that this body somehow is turning on you or doing something wrong, when in fact it's just obeying every wish and command that you put out there with every thought, feeling, and you know, intense feelings, especially, is what makes things pop. So it's just doing what it's told to do. But then, in our superstition, we say, oh, there's something going on. There's a reason why I have gray hair. There's a reason why people get symptoms. The body wasn't designed to do that. So when we get off the reincarnation wheel, that's my thoughts as far as the purpose of reincarnation in the first place. And even in prior times before the so-called fall, if you want to think of it that way, fallen consciousness, we didn't fall from heaven or someplace, just, decided to have a different experience. There were told also embodiments that would take place, more than one, but it wasn't a school of hard knocks. And then you didn't forget in between either. You came in aware, and your body was in a different state as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Many researchers, I guess, point to a potential catastrophic ancient cataclysm, which on some level could maybe be linked to this fall of consciousness, which has destabilized the base of our psyche, and there's ancient trauma involved in that as well, including Michael Tsarian. So it's interesting, these correlations. I mean, who knows, man? I guess we're all walking the path and figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, and there's evidence absolutely that civilizations have come and gone and
Yeah.
faced the same issues, just like an individual reincarnation. Civilizations that have made the same mistakes and suffered the same fate. Um, so it's not just individuals; it's collectives. In homeopathy, we talk about miasms, and you can take like the cancer miasm. It's recognized as one of the three major miasms. That's the energetic root of what we think of as disease,
Hmm.
which is another aspect about terrain medicine, by the way. It's, we're not just talking about bugs on the ground. We're appreciating that, these other energetic layers that are instrumental for projecting us in the first place. So you go back to certain civilizations. We're told that in the time of Atlantis, there was a very domineering minority group of people that inflicted their will on the mass of the population over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And because the general population did not muster it up to stand their ground, draw their line in the sand and say, no, you may not interfere with my will force. Absolutely not. Then this created an energetic that persists to this day. And we see it happening all the time. Why don't people just stop paying taxes? Why
Yeah.
don't people just say, no, you're not going to put that filth in my body? Why don't people say, stop spraying us like bugs with all the chemtrails and bullshit? Uh, you know, it's astounding, but here we are again.
Yeah.
It's a reincarnation of an entire energetic, call it a miasm, call it whatever you want. And then also it creates biological events individually. So what if you just have normal cellular events and microbial events in your body, but now that will force holographically translates into your biology, and now these helpers that are there to be part of our universe, we're the god of their universe. Now all of a sudden the tail's wagging the dog, and you got
Yeah.
stuff growing where it's not supposed to be, and bugs not behaving themselves and everything else. So you can't fool mother nature. You put things into motion on one level and it's got to go up and down the scale.
As within, so without.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hermetic principles, not
Mhm.
that hard to understand.
Yeah. It's very
Yeah.
simple. Yeah.
Relative to history, based on what you were saying before, Bear, and I know you're busy doing your thing in the garden all the time, but your thoughts or your intuition, like where is America? Where is America on that stage of related to past civilizations that have arisen and have fallen? You have any opinions or thoughts you want to share on where this country or where the world is heading?
Have you ever heard of the visions that George Washington had?
No.
No.
George Washington was a high level adept. And I know it's popular to demonize all the founding fathers these days. But George Washington had three visions. He had a visitation by an angelic being. Interestingly enough, he wrote these down verbatim, and they are to this day in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And the first two visions that were given to him are all historical events that are very well known, Civil War, you name it, all came to pass with accuracy.
Wow.
The third vision, the angel said, this has not come to pass and the decision is still to be made. And the vision showed for the first time America being assaulted on her own shores.
Hmm.
And it really identified the culprits as well, which is exactly what we see happening right now. And the angel went on to say, this does not have to be. It's still up to us. But either way, America will prevail and America will fulfill her destiny. And if needed, the light as of 1,000 suns will descend upon the earth, and there will be a great cleansing and a reckoning that will precede the last, the final golden age on this earth, where this will not be tolerated on this realm. And not within this vision, but we also have many accounts of, you know, our realm is just like we do now, traveling up the octaves and going into a different state of consciousness. So all this stuff that we see now is not going to be allowed to exist. It can't exist. It's like lower consciousness can't exist in higher consciousness. It's impossible. And, when you get a sick body, I used to see this a lot. I had a difficult practice where people came in there in pretty rough shape typically. We start treatment and you see people really start to upchuck on every level. And things looked like they're getting worse before they got better. Now we knew how to support that and we, trusted in the process and it usually had a happy ending. But the point is all the things that created the sickness in the first place had to come to the surface. That's a basic principle of homeopathy as well. And I believe that's what we're seeing right now. All the ills of the eons of this realm, uh, all of the darkness is in our face. And it's actually a good thing because it's all out in the open. There's no more secrets. We can see it all. And we all have a choice to make, and we can make the choice. So it's a great time.
Yeah.
Saint Germain, who is the master of the seventh ray, and all of us, we're told, are going to be at the helm of our own higher creations at some point in our evolution or expansion. And so the masters that have traveled before us in this realm and now play pivotal roles for the bulk of mankind as we're steered, as a species into higher realms of consciousness. And this gets into a lot of what we're talking about before, as far as how matter precipitates. There's basically seven rays, and it's another fun story as far as how that works scientifically, how that works. It's just the electronics, but there's a master in charge, like a capacitor for the original seven rays. They talk about them in the Bible, the seven Elohim, the seven thrones, and then the seven sacred planets when you get into astrology. It all has a great significance when you understand this is a technological realm with a purposeful design. So, as
But I
Saint
think there's
Germain,
seven sheaths around the womb or the placenta or something as well. Yeah.
yeah, it mirrors on every level.
Yeah.
So, uh, Saint Germain is the Lord of the violet ray, the seventh ray, and the one that is kind of taking us all the way home. And he was responsible, working, historically with many known figures. And then he was responsible also for appearing in the Congressional Hall and the signing of a declaration, giving them the courage to sign that in the first place. And he was behind the formation of the United States of America because America was the original advent of humanity within this realm in the first place. And we've come full circle. So that's why this is the spiritual heart. It's not a patriotic, political boundary kind of thing. It's a
Mm.
very spiritual, just like chakras in the body. America is the heart of the world, uh, and I kind of believe that. And Saint Germain said, I never would have taken on the task unless I knew from the start the victory was assured. That's how I feel too.
I love it, man.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I love it. It's
Also,
so interesting, and I mean, it definitely echoes a lot of my own feelings as well. It feels like there's just a massive purgation taking place. You know, it's like the devil is forced to come out from under the rug, so to speak, so obvious for everyone to see.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Whereas prior to, I guess, the events of 2020, it's almost like it was there, but it wasn't as obvious. People didn't know, people weren't aware. And now it's like all the cockroaches coming out. You know, they got nowhere to hide, so to
Mhm.
Yeah.
speak.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
There's a restaurant in Topanga called Inn of the Seventh Ray.
Oh,
It's
nice.
like a
I'm well aware of it.
yeah.
a few
Pretty
a
well
few
known. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
a few years ago, Bear, I was reading one of the main Rosicrucian texts, and I feel like a lot of this conversation kind of echoes what I read back then. Am I mistaken in that?
No, not at all. Those studies were the precursors to the theosophical, the anthroposophical, um, and it did need to be occulted because in those days, you know, and like go back to Saint Germain before he made his final ascension, we'll call it.
Mhm.
You know, he describes many experiences he had, and people like not just him, but many individuals, tens of thousands that have, you know, traveled the same route. Of course, religions have taught us that only one person is capable of doing that. And you know, they had to study in secret. They had to keep themselves sequestered because they would literally be put to death. And they had some amazing trials and tribulations they had to go through, you know, being burned at the stake and everything else. So
Yeah.
stuff was kept underground. And there was a great battlefield that was going on, you know, behind the scenes. And now it's all out in the open. But still, you know, I understand. You know, I started in 75, becoming proactive and not just learning this information, but applying it in circles, testing things out where you get in a lot of trouble.
Hmm.
You know, I had good friends, you know, literally assassinated. You know, we were targeted and, you know, were greatly harmed and financially. But and then also had a few sleepless nights wondering if it was going to get worse than that. So yeah, a lot of war stories I could share along that line. But the point is we had to meet and do things in certain ways and not always out in the open because we would have been put down in 2 seconds. So I appreciate why the Rosicrucian, you know, the secret societies, you know, throughout time kept this knowledge very guarded and met in secrecy, not because they're evil, but then, of course, the forces of the dark would always infiltrate, get this information, and weaponize it, which
Yeah.
is all that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's bad, just depends your state of consciousness and how you want to use universal principles.
Yeah. How do you wield the force?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I got a question for you. What is magic?
Magic is believing that natural law is somehow supernatural,
Nice.
Okay.
where in fact it's natural
Yeah.
and should be what we would all take as a natural part of our everyday life
Yeah.
and use it to create anything we want.
Yeah. Awesome. So
What?
great. I love that we're able
Yeah.
to touch on so many different
Oh, me too. This is
subjects
amazing.
here. You know, it's just really cool. I don't know if you wanted to ask something right away, Joel. Did you? Because I wanted to go into
I was
like
hoping
his
maybe you
vision.
could elaborate a little bit. What are some of the, I guess, what people might project as magical elements, as the magical elements of natural law that can be utilized? I don't know, something like that.
Bro, we're gonna get killed, bro, if he tells us. We can't do this right now. It's playing.
On
Tell us some
my end.
spells, Bear.
Interesting topic. Voodoo works, and practitioners of voodoo kill people. They just shake some bones at a person and a person dies. So, how does that work? Well, the practitioners understand very well how it works, and they are able to concentrate thought forms and interject on different subplanes of their victim's being. And of course, that person, the victim, has to be very vulnerable to that, to not believe that they have any defenses. So you can go into the world of radiesthesia, which is biogeometry is kind of a
Oh,
more of a
okay.
recent development within the yeah, there you go,
Yeah.
within the world of radiesthesia. There's radiesthesia instruments like a Lecker antenna that was developed by an Austrian physicist. And to this day, this is used in medicine and by engineers and so forth. But if you go into Walter Russell, and I'll get back to magic in 2 seconds here. If you know how to use this, you can go in on any of the 18 dimensions in a waveform and ping on it in certain ways to create effects and also to get information. Radiesthesia is different than plug in the wall technologies where you just get a reading, like an EKG or some such thing, because you have to develop sensitivity and attune yourself with the instrument. So now, in real science and what the alchemists understood is that um, you can never be taken out of the equation. It's impossible. There's no such thing as a double blind study. It's pretty stupid. So if you take radiesthesia devices now, the operator is trained to be contiguous with this instrument and then to ping off of different higher planes of electronics that would um, be above, the dirty electricity that we use just, to plug in our computers and such. So radiesthesia in the world of medicine, I can go in and let's just take biogeometry, the more recent development, radiesthesia, and I can go in on different subplanes of an individual, get very accurate information on anything from physical, etheric, mental, and 10 subplanes on each one of those, and find out what issues are happening. And of course, this time and distance doesn't matter, and then we can, with that information, ping with the exact waveform that's going to counter the issue that's
Mm.
creating the problem on whatever level of reality. Now that's voodoo, but it's voodoo with surgical precision, technologically assisted with good intentions. And also, a practitioner would never do any of that without the permission of the subject. It can't be done. Otherwise, you're going to rack up some really bad karma, and that will come
Mhm.
back on you. So, you could call that magic
Yeah.
if you make things happen at a distance, and you're manipulating on different realms of consciousness and then observing the physical effects on the ground, which we often do. You see actually very miraculous things happen on the ground, changes and things that happen in people's bodies. Nobody touched them. We weren't even in a room. We're 2,000 miles away. And, we're just basically doing our voodoo. So there's all different types of magic, and it can be dark or it can be light. You can Pranic healing is another great example. If I was doing acupuncture or osteopathy or any modality that I did in my career years, I was always
Yeah.
simultaneously doing pranic and,
Yeah.
projecting the exact color that would remedy, what I was simultaneously seeing in a person's center that was related to the issues they were having.
Mm. This is so amazing, like, what's out there and and what can be done to support a person in the healing process, like just go beyond most people's like frame of understanding, that people would just think it's wild. Like, I'm going to share this experience in my personal life because I feel like you dig it. The Greeks, they're all about like the evil eye. Oh, you got the evil eye on you, we got to protect you. And my mom growing up used to do these little prayers. They were
Don't do that to
sub
me.
vocal. Like I would just see, yeah, yeah. I would see her I would see her doing these saying these prayers under her breath and like kind of just doing like a
Incantations.
cross sign. And yeah, yeah, like I wouldn't hear her. I couldn't hear what it was. It would just she would be moving her lips.
Yeah.
And then she would be yawning like crazy, yawning and tearing from the eyes and all this stuff. And I remember when I started doing some deep like energetic training and healing work and body work, we would do some verbal energetic clearings. And when I would do them, I started like yawning and tearing up, and it brought me back to
Yeah.
those memories. So I was like, Mom, like I went back to her. I was like, what is like, can you teach me the thing that you did? And she goes, well, I can't tell you what the prayers are. I have to write it on a piece of paper and hide it somewhere, and you need to come upon it on your own. This is how it was passed down to her. And so she did that once where she just wrote it on a piece of paper in Greek, and I found it one day, and I've just like integrated them into my life, and I use it, and I've used it before. Like my wife asks me if she's like feeling a little out of it, or she feels like maybe she's been around a crowd of people or whatever, and she feels like maybe there's been some negative projections on her. Like I do it on her, she feels better. She just feels better almost instantaneously. So it's trippy, man.
And if you just hear that from a different culture and, everything you're describing, it seems superstitious, but there's great wisdom behind those practices if you understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's why it relates and it resonates based on what you're saying when you're breaking it down from a much more like scientific standpoint as well. Scientific in the
Mhm.
alchemical sense as opposed to the scientism sense, and the reductionist sense that we're dealing with and we have been dealing with for a long time. So it's actually like having that experience really connected me so much more to my lineage and my culture, and had
Yeah.
so much more respect for my mother in terms of where she came from. She grew up in the mountains of Greece, like they lived in the
Yeah.
mountains. They lived that life. Like my mom came from nothing, but they had this old world knowledge and this connection to the land, and connection to their religion, and then who knows what that evolved from as well. If you think about through
Yeah.
the generations, what was passed down, it's beautiful actually.
Yeah. My parents and grandparents were from the old country too. They're Latin,
Mm,
one side Peru, my mom, and then my dad Italian. So they brought a lot of that with them. And I talk a lot about waveform physics and all these different things. But just to be honest with you, I have a fascination with those things, and I have delved into a pretty good level and understanding. But that was so I could play a role because our culture needs to hear that stuff. When it comes to my own life, I don't think about any of that shit. you
mm,
know, I'm just I'm just reading between the lines, and that's what I'm most comfortable with. I um I did an apprenticeship when I was early 30s. Not because I was looking for it. In fact, I had to get dragged into it. Um, there was a person from another culture who's in his 90s, and I won't elaborate on it, but he was chosen at birth from that culture to be, what they would call a medicine man. So it's not like he woke up one day and said, "Oh, I think I'll be a doctor." And I had some remarkable experiences with him. He sought me out, actually sent somebody after me. And next thing I know, I'm spending an intensive year, and I was like the last project of his life, and he helped me understand why we got together. And it's a long story. But after I had experienced a lot of things with him, I said, "Grandpa, why am I even learning all this crap in school? It's worthless." And he looked at me, said, "You have to, because my medicine won't work the same in your world, but people need to believe in you. So
Mm,
you need to know how things work. I'm paraphrasing now. Uh, but you also need that language. So that's what all the school was. But
Yeah.
on another level, you don't, your intellect really doesn't need to be that busy at all.
yeah. So are you saying more of an intuitive, natural way of being?
You're tuning into higher logic when the impediments in your central column are open, when you're able to, make the clear connection between this center, your heart, and, the higher centers, when two centers in the brain are actually functioning as a dipole and creating that electrical arc that can receive the messages, the impulses through the crown, which is what vaccines dampen deliberately. And then, make that connection here. Then your heart, this isn't a new agey kind of concept. Your heart is literally your real brain. And back in the Rosicrucian days, Joel, talking about them again, they had in the underground a salutation they did, which basically meant unification of heart and mind. And our heart and our mind has been separated. So, we're operating on one polarity only. And so when those two are connected and when the heart becomes a real receiver, you aren't thinking about anything. You're receiving direct knowledge. There's no reason for speech, books. It's all there. We never had to struggle. It was never the original plan to struggle to know something because knowledge is universal. It's just there. You just get a download. Why should you have to work for it? And if we're unlimited creative beings, why wouldn't we have access to that all the time? And why would we have any delay in that access that would help us in the creations that are our contributions, that are our responsibility to add to universal consciousness? So, I guess in the meantime, we bake it with books and,
Mhm.
and university degrees. I got all these diplomas on the wall, and, it's a bunch of BS.
Uh,
This has been
what
incredible.
inspi
Yeah.
what you say?
No, I was going to say it's just been an incredible conversation. I'm truly grateful to share it.
Yeah, man. I really just value you. I value your story. I value your mind. I value your smile, man. It's just really great to be in your presence, and I can't wait to come up north and visit you someday and give you a hug. And just see what you got going on there. And I guess I kind of want to end on that. Like, what was the inspiration for Alpha Vedic? Like, what was it? You're like, hey, I'm gonna go do my thing and be out in the woods and learn permaculture and be with the plants and create a business and just do my thing. Like, what was it? And what's your
It,
vision for it moving forward?
Mhm. Well, again, it was just one foot after another. We started living off grid, my wife and myself, in 77
Mhm.
in Northern California. And then we're out in Fiji, and then Hawaii. We had a off grid place, and then the farm before here. So she grew up in a ranching family. So we're just both naturally connected to the land, and so was I. And I had that rub off in different cultures. It was very different than growing up in a, I'd go spend the night at a buddy's house in grammar school, whatever. And I remember when I first started doing stuff like that, just it felt so different, because my house was, broken English and,
Uh-huh.
just different kind of food and smells. It wasn't sterile at all. It was very, animated in certain ways. So that, that had a big effect as far as, just what we were comfortable with living in nature. And we just always grew stuff. My mom, you don't go to the store to get an herb. You just, she, they better go out and pick some rosemary or whatever. everything's growing out there. So I think it was just second nature. And then seeing the way the world was going, and then my vocation in alternative medicine and understanding with the bioterrain medicine that, we're just talking about ecosystems inside and out, and we have to be able to resonate and reach homeostasis, with our own ecology, with the outside. And so turning to farming was just a natural thing. My wife owned and operated two nurseries,
Mm.
pretty high level plant nurseries. So we're just always kind of in that business. And then Alpha Vedic, I started another company, which is still going on down in Santa Barbara. And the point of it was I wanted some foundational nutritional products for clients because I was still seeing people back then. And I just wasn't happy with the quality of anything that was available. So I just started making my own stuff. And then it turned into a company, gave that to one of my kids. And then we moved here, started farming full time. And Mike came on board, because he was doing some website work for us, and he was a good buddy of my oldest son.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting around saying, okay, what do we call ourselves? And then my oldest son came up with the name. We said, okay, and that was it. And now I've got my lab done. Our last podcast I actually did in my lab, so you could see it.
Cool.
And you know we grow, we've been at this place for 6 years, and our medicinal crops, which is what we specialize in, are pretty extensive. And now I'm going to just start making spagyrics in my lab. And it's like the next level of tinkering, I guess, whatever.
So cool, man.
And my wife and myself, we don't do anything unless we're enjoying it. The minute something stops being fun, we're out of here.
I think that's how life should be, and
Yeah.
I think we talked about it on your episode with my wife when we pulled up your human design real quickly, and we
Oh,
share the
yeah.
same profile. We're 5'1", which is the heretic investigator, which obviously related to you because the investigator always wants to get to the bottom of things,
Yeah.
So with your history of all the work, all the knowledge, all the different modalities, all the introspection, is just it makes sense. And then the heretic is the heretic and the teacher, and I don't know, it's pretty cool. And but the reason I brought it up too is I believe you were a generator as well, like us, and it's all about following your bliss. It's about doing the things
Yeah.
that light you up. And if you're not being lit up, then what's the point? So
Yeah.
it's something that I've intuitively kind of followed in my life, but then once I gained a little bit of this knowledge, it was just a deeper understanding, where I was like, fuck that shit, man. Why am I gonna be miserable and frustrated during my days? Let me do what really excites me and makes me happy and inspires me to keep taking that next step forward into the more exciting or the unknown, and I mean we're at the my wife and I are like in the beginning stages of our place in Topanga, and we just planted 50 fruit trees, and I'm buying some permaculture
Oh,
books and trying to
wow.
learn some things. And
Good for
we
you
have,
guys.
we had a thanks, man. We had like an orange tree that was on the property before that like died because water started getting to it, and then the gophers just like ate around the base of the thing. And so it's just, it's part of life. We just got to keep learning, and it's exciting. We just got our first 2 eggs from our chickens that we've had since they were chicks yesterday. So, it's exciting.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's fun. It's an adventure. I've had this
Yeah.
fascination with Greece lately. I'm just YouTubing out on travel experiences, people that go to Greece and all these outer islands and everything. Just what an amazing place. So, I mean, there's part of us where we could just pack it in tomorrow and disappear off into some remote
Uh-huh.
island in the Mediterranean or something.
Have you been to Greece at all?
No,
Oh
I have
man,
Italian
dude.
citizenship, and I haven't even been to Italy.
Dude, you would love Greece, man. I mean, I
I
just
know I
we
would.
almost moved there. We almost moved there in it was
Ooh,
like 2019. We were gonna like move to this island that we found. Thank God we didn't because of everything that went down. It would have been a shit show, like with everything.
yeah.
And I'm happy with what we found here in Topanga. But the Greek islands, man, like when you go, not during the busy times, maybe June or
Yeah.
September, they're I know I'm from there, and obviously your lineage is from that area. It's just
Yeah.
it's a magical place. The sun, the culture, the food, the people, they're not like huge hotels. It's there's this
Yeah.
love there, man. It's my happy place, and I haven't been there since 2019, and we'll see what happens. But hey, man, if you can get a chance to go to Greece, whether or not you pick up and go and move everything there, that's one thing. But to take a little trip, man, you would love Greece. I just know it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Just these remote islands with a couple hundred people living on
Yeah.
them, and my wife and myself, we're nomadic. I mean, even though we grow roots, we'll pick up in a second if spirit moves us. So I wouldn't have any problem moving there.
And there's plenty of islands that have like when people ask me for recommendations, I'm just like, don't go to all these big touristy ones. Like
No.
there are other ones that are just they still have that purity, where you can if you go during a time where it's not really busy, you're by yourself on a beach, like butt naked. Like there's no one around you. It's you, your
Yeah.
wife, like this it doesn't even matter. So it's cool. Anyways.
Sweet.
Amazing. Bear, do you have a final message for our audience? What do you want to leave our people with?
Ooh. Um, Tough one. Yeah, just trust. Trust. It's going to have a happy ending. And how quick that happy ending comes is up to us. Just don't buy into all the BS out there. I mean, you look at these people that we give so much attention to, politicians and globalists, and uh, they're pretty feeble. Um, and how we take them seriously in the first place is unbelievable. So yeah, tap into yourself. We have all the power and they know it. That's why they're doing desperate things right now. Their biggest fear is that we're going to figure out who we are. We just had a workshop here at the farm. It was
Hmm.
very powerful, and it was on legal law um, issues, just as far as how to conduct yourself with paperwork and things in the outer world to protect what's yours. But the theme of the whole thing was it has nothing to do with the paperwork. It's about that resonance that you bring into the awareness that I am, you are an individualized, powerful spiritual being. And then when you just really own that, then if you have to interact, whether you're doing some paperwork or what have you, and the more people that light up like that, it's game over, because the only power that these creatures have over us is that we give them our energy. And as soon as we stop doing that, it's going to be no different than a house plant that you stop watering. It's going to wither and die in 2 seconds because they don't have any mana of their own. That's why they have to steal from us, because they lost that tether a long time ago.
Yep.
Yeah. So pay attention, tune in, and what me worry, basically.
Incredible. Thank you so much. I had no idea that we'd be interviewing a wizard today, so that was lots of fun. Guys, thank you for listening to this episode. We're going to drop all Bear's links and Alfa Vedic's links in the brief, in the show notes. Please check out all their material. They've got an amazing podcast as well. Bear's co-host is Mike Winner, who we had on maybe 20 or 30 episodes ago now. Such an honor, Bear. Guys, we'll see you next time.
Smoking mirrors, I'm seeing through the illusion. Waking up in a time, they think you're in a delusion. Somebody set the alarms, cause they be too busy snoozing. I'm in a DeLorean, fast forward in evolution to a place where we can share our confusions. Yeah, 450 BC, I'm sharing tea with